we're to the point where not only do we have multiple priorities, we've got more than we can even take in to read and absorb as data streams to figure out what the priorities are. So, if anything, this article has aged like a fine wine. It is not dated. This thing is even more relevant than it was day one.
Here we go again. Mark and Mike telling you what they think, even when they're not really thinking. Welcome to It Doesn't Take a Genius.
Ramsey!
Marshall, I'm glad we both recovered our faces, as we began the podcast because we were both making ridiculous faces. And I've noticed something. This is just for our YouTube audience. Our heads are never quite aligned and in proportion, like we haven't been able to figure out how to do that. I think it's because I am sitting at an angle. Do you notice this? Like my head's a little bit turned and tilted. And I think the reason is because that's how I was trained when I got a public relations degree and had to take broadcasting courses from former TV anchors and so on. They want you to, out of interest, tilt so that you're turning your head. So it's never going to line up. We're never going to be that cool podcast where it looks like two people identically in the same room. We'll never be able to do it.
No. Because the other thing, and I thought you were going to mention it, is I have a misshapen head. So yeah. This is not a bone structure you want to emulate.
Well, when the day comes, I will tell you when the day comes that I'm my hair's thinning and the day is coming where I'm going to be like you and just shave it. But it's going to be a bad day because there's a big knot back here that is just built into my skull, and it's not going to be pretty, but I'm going to enjoy it while I can. So here we are.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yes.
Hey.
So glad to be here and back by popular demand. A follow-up.
Yes.
A follow-up to Who's Got the Monkey? The 131 delegation system.
Yeah, this is it's funny how often we talk about this and it always resonates with somebody. I think because there are so many people still struggling with something that Stephen Covey mentions in his sort of what do you want to call it, like a follow-up article that got put in with the reprint of the Harvard Business Review original article, which is we're still just so tempted to do command and control. We're still just so tempted to say, I'll do all the stuff and not delegate it because I don't have time to delegate it. And also, how am I going to show my value? There's scarcity of resources and accolades and promotions. And so I'm going to have to do it. I can't delegate to you because I don't have time to delegate to you. I'd have more time if I delegated to you, but I don't have time to delegate to you because I got to do the things I got to do to further my career. We're just so tempted to be autocratic like that, even though we know, quote unquote, empowerment is the way forward.
Thank you, Joe Biden.
Wow.
Gonna whisper for emphasis. When we talk to managers, and like I said, like we talked about last episode, it's always the one or two thing that they know they struggle with.
Yeah.
When you get down to the basic root of it all, it's lack of trust.
100%.
So they mask lack of trust with it's faster to do it myself.
Right.
Which is an absolutely true statement in the short run.
In the short run. Yeah.
To
pay now or pay later.
Yeah. To do that task, right? It's easier if I just do it myself. I don't trust they'll do it. And this is one of my favorite phrases. I don't trust that they'll do it the right way, which is code for exactly like I would do it.
Yeah, my way.
That's my way, which is, of course, the best way, but not always. So yeah, they're not going to do it the right way. It won't get done on time. They'll drop the ball. I'll have to go back and clean up the mess, right? All of this. And you wrap that all in the blanket of lack of trust.
Yes, and you mentioned that Covey talks about this in his article. I'm trying to find the exact quote, but he basically says, we don't trust that they can do it and that they will do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When we delegate, we don't trust those two things, which we've talked about this on the podcast before. Charles Feltman's The Thin Book of Trust. That there are emotional things about trust. Do I think the guy's genuine? Do I think he cares about my interests? That's important. But here it could just be the plain old rational. I'm not sure the guy can do it that I'm delegating to, and I'm not sure he's gonna do it either. I'm not sure he's gonna have the follow through to get it done. Those are legitimate issues.
Oh, definitely, definitely. Yeah, I think the way Covey says it, he says you should never give somebody a monkey, right? Never give them the task unless they have two things: the ability to do the task and the desire to do the
There it is.
task.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so yeah, exactly what you said. So the idea that yeah, there's some work to be done before I can make sure that I'm not accepting monkeys. All right.
Well, that's right. And here we have to talk about our mentor, Greg Tansky, who gets, he and Dolores Hazel, really should be getting royalties from us. We quote him so often just in how they developed us. But Greg, was fond of telling us, you can delegate just about anything except developing your people,
Mm-hmm.
right? Giving them the ability and the desire, the want to, giving them the skill and the will. That's on the manager. That is something that they in the nature of the role they have to do in order to be able to delegate. But also, it's just what the job is. The job is developing your people. So here's a great
Mm-hmm.
example: delegate.
Yeah, we have a client that we work with, a major multi-million dollar operation, and he finally figured out, he came to the conclusion early in his stint as the head of this organization that his number one job was to create more leaders.
That's right.
That's it, right? If he does
Yep.
that, everything else will work.
That's exactly it.
It will be fantastic.
Yeah.
So all right. So let's position this. I've got people who have the ability and the desire to be more and do more,
Hmm.
and they're bringing me their monkeys. I've handed the monkeys back to them using the 1-3-1. We
Yep.
figured out what the true issue or opportunity is. We've brainstormed a few things that they could do as next steps, and they have committed to a next step. So now they fully have the monkey and they have a smart action item.
Yep.
What should happen next? And the very last piece of the Harvard Business Review article is titled "The Care and Feeding of Monkeys." It's beautiful, right? Five rules for the care and feeding of monkeys. Rule number one: monkeys should be fed or shot. Otherwise, they will starve to death. So wonderful blunt wording.
Yep. This guy must have been a hoot, right? Onken must have been an absolute hoot.
Well, Covey says at some point he saw the guy, one of the articles
Oh
that
yeah. Right.
one of the guys who wrote the article walking through the airport with a stuffed monkey on his back as part of his branding, just walking around, creating conversations. So monkeys should be fed or shot, and we talked about this. So right, what is is this important enough that I stay on top of it? Is this
Right.
important enough to follow up on? Is basically what they're saying. If it's not important enough to follow up on, just kill it now.
Yep.
Just say, hey, this is not a priority. We'll put it on the list for, maybe it's not urgent, not important at this point in our operation. But so yeah, make a decision. And we see this so often, I call it evaporation,
Yeah.
where we have this great cause, we work on it a little bit, this project or whatever, and then nobody ever consciously says stop. It's just we lose focus, we look at other things, maybe a person gets transferred or we hire a new guy, and then 6 months later we go, hey, how come we never did that thing?
Yeah.
and nobody can pin an exact date on when it happened. It just evaporated.
Right.
Right. And the author says in this case, he calls it just starved to death.
Right.
It slowly
Right.
died of starvation.
Well, and
Uh,
it's very related to rule two, because often that evaporation happens because we just got too many monkeys.
mm-hmm.
There's just too many.
Yep.
So, let's do rule two.
Yeah, that brings us to rule two. Yeah, the monkey population should be kept below the maximum number the manager has time to feed. So this is fascinating. So we always think about, okay, what's my workload as the manager? I've got all these, priorities and tasks and reports, and I've got to, do all this stuff. But there's also a limit to how much stuff that I can oversee that my team is doing.
Right.
That's fascinating because you think, okay, we've got infinite capacity. Whatever the team can do, I can help them manage. Nope.
You're finite.
Yeah, yeah, it's finite. So the feeding of a monkey, and by feeding of the monkey, we mean follow up,
Hmm.
progress reports, updates, things like that. That we should be able to do that and do it in such a way that we can do it on a consistent basis and manage the monkeys that we have currently in process.
And he gives some pretty specific measurements on what would qualify, right? He says shouldn't take more than 5 to 15 minutes to do that update, that check in. So how many 5 to 15 minute slots do you have on a regular basis? That's how many monkeys you can hand off and keep feeding.
Oh yeah, and we've had managers tell us that because we've talked about the rule of thumb that you should check in with each of your employees at least 15 minutes per week.
Right.
And some managers look at their schedule, they look at their number of employees and say, that's not possible. I,
Right.
I can't have a nice dedicated 15-minute one-on-one conversation with each of my team members in a given week.
Yeah.
So then that also, dovetails nicely into this rule that,
Yes,
yeah,
it
you
does.
probably can't have that many monkeys going at one time either
Hmm.
because you're not going to be able to get to them all.
That's right. Uh, Very much related to rule three. These seem to be dovetailing. It's almost like this guy thought this out.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, but
Rule three, monkeys should be fed by appointment only.
yeah.
Yeah, how much? And this goes back to the number one issue that managers always talk about. It's always one or two. It's time management delegation.
Yep.
And we always come to the conclusion after we talk about time management with managers that the calendar is going to be the savior. Right?
Yeah.
The to-do list is nice, but the calendar, right? If I can schedule, and we know like we work in a very chaotic space, which is automotive retail
Hmm.
and restaurants, fall into the same category where they're at the whim of the retail customer. But even with that, we know we've got a much better chance of having a conversation if it's scheduled and on the calendar than if it's not.
I can go a little farther than that, Mike. I've got a government client that they don't even call the citizens who walk through the door anything other than customers, and they walk through the door constantly. And there is a rule in the office: the customer and that phone call from a customer is priority one. I've got another client that is a quasi governmental organization. Guess what? They have a time management issue too because they get emailed and phone called requests for assistance, and they have to decide, the priority matrix basically of which of these are we going to take on and which of these are we going to try to find a new home for and sort of close the loop on and hand off to somebody. Um, Financial planning office that I work with. Guess what? Time management. It's all the same thing. Everybody is wrestling with this. And it does come down to what I think is I'm sort of hearing in my head the four disciplines of execution talking about a cadence of accountability.
Mm-hmm. Oh
I'm going
yeah,
to have some sort of some sort of system that's going to be a regular one-on-ones, or maybe it's the meeting that I call once a week and say we're going to do a quick huddle and I need an update. This is my meeting. I want an update from you on where things stand with these monkeys. Whatever your system is, you're going to have to put that on the calendar because everybody is wrestling with this.
Oh yeah, 100%. Well, and the other thing that we talk about when we talk about time management is this avoids the impromptu, unscheduled conversations
Yep.
that derail you, and you're leader. You're focused on gorillas and big strategic things, and
Yep.
now somebody's like, "Hey, I wanted to give you an update." It's not the time,
Yep.
right? My head's not there. And so when they know that there's a scheduled time for discussion, then a lot of times the employees, unless there's an emergency, most of the time the team members, the employees will know, okay, I'll have his undivided attention or her undivided
Yeah.
attention at this point in time, so I won't just butt in, impromptu and unscheduled, to divert attention.
100%. And theoretically, right, you're a manager that puts out a lot of fires. By doing this, you are reducing the number of fires that you suddenly get called to, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
this is going to help you. Again, it's pay now or pay later, right? You're going to have to dedicate the time to have that cadence of accountability and have those check-ins on the monkeys, but over time you're getting rid of some of those emergency situations.
Yep, perfectly said. So rule number 4.
Hmm.
This one is hysterical because this article was written well before the computers and emails and stuff like that.
Yep.
Monkeys should be fed face to face or by telephone, but never by mail.
Right.
Right? Yeah. So never by fax machine, mail, email, text, or whatever. So when we're going to have an update, a progress check, face to face, or at least a voice to voice on phone.
Yeah.
And so this idea of who's got the next step dovetails perfectly here.
Yeah. Yeah. And he says earlier in the article, like, as even if you give the person the monkey back and say, study this and come up with a plan and send me a memo. Well, as soon as that memo hits your inbox, guess what? You own the monkey now, right? The
Yep.
monkey is on your back. So let's avoid that and just have these, live conversations where we get things to, get to the bottom of what we're talking about.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's implied if you're going to send me an email update that I respond to the email.
Right.
I now got another item on my to-do list. The progress of the monkey is now completely dependent upon me responding to the email saying, "Hey, this all sounds good. Keep going," or "Oh, wait a minute," or whatever. Doesn't
Yep.
matter what it is. It's now stopped. Right.
Yep.
I am now as the leader, the impediment to progress.
And it's funny
I'm the
because
problem.
this is the very thing that makes coaching so powerful, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who has the burden of responding to a question?
Exactly. Exactly. So, yeah, perfectly played. All right. Rule number 5: every monkey should have an assigned next feeding time and degree of initiative. So, every conversation ends with, "All
Yep.
right, we'll get back together on such and such a date, and you can let me know how it's going."
Yep.
So every feeding it ends with the scheduling of the next feeding.
Yeah. Rule 5 is really cool because it's basically saying, here's how you operationalize rules 1 through 4.
Yep.
It's basically saying this is going to be the technique we use to make sure we do this one-on-one, that we regularly get an update, that all the things that we just covered. And not to toot your horn, Mike, but this is basically how you do the respect-based performance coaching system that you came up with. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's baked into the worksheet, and we can. I guess we probably ought to throw into the show links, the show notes, a link to the system, the episodes we've done about it. But this is it's so practical and it's so common sense that you basically came up with it before even reading this article.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. You know that this is the only way for busy people to get things done.
Right.
And one of the other issues that managers tell us they struggle with is accountability.
Yep.
So if I want accountability, if I leave it vague, "Hey, get with me when there's more progress."
Yep.
Well, when's that? Right now, it's
Right.
completely open. I've lost urgency, and I don't have a deadline, and we know that deadlines drive behavior, drive performance. So the deadline itself, right? We have a couple of book clubs, and the guys will have 2 months to read half a book, and we always ask them, all right, so when did you guys read the book? Last night. Like, and that's fine. But without that deadline, without the next scheduled follow up, the book probably wouldn't get read. In this case,
Well,
the
now
monkey's
you
not
say
going
that
to make
I will
progress.
give you some very positive pushback on that. I don't know if you noticed that the last go round of asking, hey, when did you read it? There actually was probably about half the room that was reading it ahead of time and were rereading it the night before.
Oh,
And, that sort of goes back to the original point, right? We're developing leaders, right? So these are people who said, there's something valuable here. So I have the ability to implement this book, and I've got the desire to figure out what's in it. They are reading it earlier
mhm.
than we think.
Oh,
So
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
that's
some of them
been a
got
development.
some of them got so excited about it, they read the whole thing and then had to go back for the part we were
Yes.
going to discuss.
Yes.
So that's perfect. And we have even had people ask for recommendations.
Oh yeah.
What's the next book I should be reading?
Yep.
And like,
100%.
now we're talking. All
Yep.
right, so yeah, we'll schedule the next feeding, schedule the follow up, as you would do with anything that's important.
Yep.
Uh, if you have surgery, your doctor doesn't just let you go.
Right.
He always says, "I'm going to need to see you again."
Right.
Right, we're going to check
Right.
progress, make sure everything's doing what it's supposed to be doing,
Yep.
and they'll set a date and a time, and they'll text you, twice a day for the next 10 years until it shows up. Right, it's just relentless texting. But yeah, this is perfect, right? So now the system is so amazing. We've dealt with delegation,
Hmm.
and we've dealt with time management.
Yep. They are linked. They are linked, I think, every time. It's just a closing thought here. The fact that this guy wrote this, what was it, 70, can't remember,
74, I think.
74. Yeah, so he writes this in 74, and that's as, the industrial age is becoming the information age, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he writes this at a time when we already had the Industrial Revolution. We already had, priorities, plural, which had never happened before the Industrial Revolution. It was always there was one priority, there was one first thing. Now we've got this system where there's a multiple first things. Well, now that we're well past the 70s, we're in the information age. We're to the point where not only do we have multiple priorities, we've got more than we can even take in to read and absorb as data streams to figure out what the priorities are. So, if anything, this article has aged like a fine wine. It is not dated. This thing is even more relevant than it was day one. And so we would encourage you to take this very seriously. How would I implement this? What would I have to change about my day-to-day interactions with my people to get the 131 thing going and then to keep it going with these 5 rules? So I, I guess I just say that just to highlight the importance of what we're talking about here. This is an absolute game changer.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. When you think about, right, I was 14, I was buying a relatively unsophisticated calculator for what would be the equivalent of probably $200
Oh
today.
yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
that's where we were. The little red numbers, made up of the little dashes.
yep.
I mean, and so yeah, it's held up well, and I think it's even more powerful today, and it's Harvard Business Review's second most reprinted article, and still shows up when they survey today as the most impactful article that they've ever published.
So cool, so cool. Well, I think we should put a button in it and let somebody else talk for a change.
That's right. Yes, our man, the eye in the sky, the silky smooth tones of Mr.
Wow.
Wolf. Take it away, Mr. Wolf.
And that's a wrap. The musings of Mark and Mike. No rights reserved, etc. Feel free to share and discuss what you heard today. Even claim the ideas as your own. Who'd want to do that? See you next time on It Doesn't Take a Genius. Thanks.
That's good enough.